The Dutton family's most shocking Yellowstone deaths, including 1883 and 1923. Ranked. The Dutton family experiences a long list of tragedies in Yellowstone, with many shocking deaths marking the Dutton family tree. Many of the family's heartbreaking tragedies occur with their ongoing fight to maintain control of the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch, the largest contiguous ranch in the United States. The family's perils begin in 1883 when they traverse a northwestern trail from Texas to Montana in search of a more satisfying life. The unsavory incidents that the Dutton family faced in Yellowstone prequel, 1883, set them up for more hardships. Despite James and Margaret Dutton, John Dutton IE's earliest known ancestors, making it to Montana, their daughter experiences a tragic fate. Elsa's fate is just the first sacrifice of many the family makes for the next 140 years while defending their land, which began with James Dutton's dream. Only a few Dutton family members escaped the family's trend, like when John Dutton II passed away of cancer with his head on his son's shoulder. Likewise, John Dutton IV dies in Yellowstone Season 5, but his namesake ensures Monica that her baby had a perfect life. Claire Dutton's death was sad, but there was quite a bit of build-up to the moment when the grieving mother shot herself on the Oregon Trail. Claire never even left Texas, where the family's journey begins. James Dutton's sister remained sour about the journey as the family prepared to tag along with Thomas and She's wagon train. She sealed her fate as the pioneers camped by the river, throwing a rock at an unruly man who came to water his horse nearby. Claire's attack started a gunfight, and someone shot her daughter, Mary Abel. The mother remarked as she sat by the riverbank after Mary Abel's death that she had lost 6 other children. From her perspective, Claire has no choice but to go on the wagon train to Oregon after her husband, Henry, dies, leaving her dependent on her brother. However, once her daughter is gone, Claire no longer wants to continue on the journey and shoots herself in the head with a pistol. While Jamie's death was a long-awaited epic conclusion to a massive Yellowstone story, it didn't necessarily shock its audience. In contrast, fans and critics cited Jamie's death as universally predictable, and that claim has quite a bit of merit. Jamie Dutton barely had a story in Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2, another way Yellowstone audiences expressed, and his story primarily dealt with his downfall and threats from his sister that she was going to kill him. After Jamie and Beth's sibling war experienced a lull in the first half of Part 2, Sheridan left Jamie's death for the final episode. After John Dutton IE's funeral, Beth takes off to her brother's house, refusing to turn the car around when her husband calls. Once inside his home, Beth attacks Jamie, and he fights back. A bloody brawl ensues, with the siblings rolling around on the floor and taking punches. Ultimately, it's still shocking to watch as Beth stabs Jamie in the abdomen in cold blood. While it was shocking to watch the seemingly impervious James Dutton take a hit, the pioneer's death was inevitable. In Sheridan's 1883 Yellowstone prequel, James Dutton helped lead a wagon train of emigrants on the Oregon Trail, and the former farmer and captain cheated death along the journey more times than he would care to count. Despite many close calls, James survived the journey, settling in the Paradise Valley in Montana, and setting up the 1883 prophecy from the Yellowstone finale. James Dutton makes a homestead after his harrowing journey, but the perils of his dream aren't over. Yellowstone's flashbacks to the 1883 characters in 1893 and 1894 show James and Margaret's life after they settle. The flashback that opens Yellowstone Season 4, Episode 4, No Kindness for the Coward, explains that after a shootout with horse thieves on his land, James dies of a gunshot wound inflicted during the fight. While it was inevitable James would die, his character once seemed invincible to death. Emma's death came out of the blue, but she wasn't a starring character in the series, and signs that the grieving widow was struggling existed. Emma Dutton is a character in Sheridan's 1923 Yellowstone prequel. She married into the family, tying the knot with John Dutton, a boy in the 1883 story who was featured as an adult 40 years later in 1923. While she isn't in a leading role, Emma has a sturdy place alongside Helen Mirren's Cara Dutton character before her untimely fate. After her husband's death, Emma shot herself in the Dutton family's lodge in 1923. Emma's fate is reminiscent of Claire Dutton's death and Monica Dutton's sister-in-law, who both took their lives after losing a vital piece of their family. Sheridan riddles his tales with tragedy, and stories like Emma's play an unfortunate part. Emma's death leaves her and John Dutton's son, Jack, without any parents. Emma Dutton's death reflects the family's despair while maintaining their ranch during the Great Depression. While Elsa Dutton's death in 1883 is undoubtedly one of, if not the most memorable, the whole point of her demise is rooting for her anyway, despite knowing it's coming. In the opening scene of 1883 Episode 1, a Lakota warrior shoots Elsa Dutton in the abdomen with an arrow. The scene is a flash forward to the penultimate episode of the series, when the Dutton family is well into their journey, and James, Shea, and Thomas tamper with a horrific crime scene that leads the Lakota warriors to attack their wagon train mistakenly. Elsa is caught up in the attack, trying to distract the warriors and protect the wagon train by leading some of her assailants in the other direction on horseback. Elsa falls off her horse when struck in the back of the head. When she wakes up and finds the wagon train in shambles, Elsa fights for her life, shooting several warriors before one pierces her liver with a poison arrow. Elsa doesn't die immediately, but Spotted Eagle confirms in the finale that Elsa will die of her wounds, and she dies in her father's lap once they arrive in Paradise Valley. John Dutton is a significant character in the Yellowstone franchise. He appeared in each of Sheridan's established Dutton series at a different stage in his life. In 1883, John was just a 5-year-old boy when he made a northwestern journey from Texas to Montana with his family. In 1923, John appeared 40 years later as an adult with a wife and child. Yellowstone flashbacks to 1893 and 1894 also feature the character as a teenager after the family settled in Montana. Due to his extensive presence in the franchise, John Dutton's death was shocking, primarily because the character was previously impervious. It's incredible that John didn't die as a 5-year-old on the Oregon Trail, surviving shootouts simply by hiding in the family's wooden clothespin. After making it through their harrowing journey, it seems cruel that, hungry for revenge, Banner Creighton takes John Dutton out with a shot to the eye and several blows to his chest with his machine gun. Of all the Dutton deaths, Evelyn Dutton's is one of the least violent but most disconcerting. Evelyn Dutton is John I.E.'s wife. She is long gone by the time Yellowstone kicks off, but appears in flashbacks in Yellowstone Season 1, Episodes 3 and 7. Evelyn's presence in Episode 3, No Good Horses, is a particularly somber occasion, parallel to the modern-day timeline where Beth and the Dutton family are mourning the anniversary of Evelyn's death. When horseback riding with her children in a flashback to 1997, Beth and Evelyn have an altercation just before the Dutton matriarch's death. Evelyn chides Beth, who is fearful on horseback and struggles to control her steed. As Beth's horse loses its composure, her mother's horse joins the panic. The steed bucks her off, and Evelyn's spine snaps as the mother falls to the ground and lands on her back. Hearing Evelyn's spine break was chilling, even though it was long confirmed that she didn't survive. Lee Dutton's death was one of the most shocking of the franchise because we had no context for how perilous the Dutton family's journey in Yellowstone would become. The Dutton family has experienced their fair share of tragedies, but Lee's death in the Yellowstone premiere kicks that off. The eldest Dutton son never made it home after John I confronts the Broken Rock Reservation with a convoy of cowboys and livestock agents to reclaim his cattle. Lee Dutton's death in Yellowstone Season 1, Episode 1, is especially shocking because John I.E.'s son is positioned as a main character when the series begins. Lee's brother becomes all the more vital to the series, and his father, after Case witnesses his brother-in-law, Roger Long, shoot Lee. Lee's death was a clear message of the tragedy and death that would plague the series after. It's the first death in a string of modern tragedies that afflict the Dutton family tree as they fight for their ranch.